Over 4 million people have come off food stamps since last July of 2025, and officials in Washington are calling part of that a good sign. The data tells a totally different story. New work requirements are just the start of what's changing, and the bigger shift doesn't even come until October. So here's what's actually driving this drop: which states are getting hit the hardest, and what happens next if you or someone you know relies on SNAP. So, 4 million people have come off food stamps in the last year. And the government's explanation is basically, well, the economy is doing great. People don't need it anymore. These people don't live in the normal world. The data the data says that's not what's happening. Here's what's actually going on with SNAP right now. This is why you're seeing the changes, and this is small compared to what's going to hit in October. So last year, about 42 million Americans were on SNAP every single month. That's roughly 1 in 8 people in this country. As of April, that number came down to 37 million. That's a drop of 11%, and it happened pretty fast. That was in under a year. And it's not spread out evenly, though, because Arizona's been hit the hardest. Enrollment there is down almost half. So over 400,000 people are no longer getting benefits in Arizona. For the first time, more people in Arizona are showing up to food banks than are enrolled in food stamps. Louisiana, Florida, and Oklahoma have seen steep drops too. And in the states that are tracking this closely, over 1 million kids have lost benefits. Now, the Agriculture Secretary has pointed to a stronger economy and said some of this is fraud being cleaned out of the system. Worth addressing head on because it's a fair question. Okay, some of it, yeah, fraud, I'll give it to you, right? But is this really just the economy improving? Anyway, policy analysts who track this say no, which I say no, because unemployment has stayed basically flat over the same time while grocery prices have kept climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. If fewer people needed help, you'd expect to see the help at food banks dropping too, but that's not what's happening. So the underlying numbers show something different. What changed were the rules and not the people's situations. Now, a federal law passed last summer added new work requirements, 80 hours a month, for a much wider group of people. That includes veterans, homeless individuals, young adults going out or aging out of foster care, parents that have teenagers between the ages of 14 and 17, and adults that are 55 to 64. The Congressional Budget Office projects that this work requirement alone will cut the average monthly participation by 2.4 million people every year through the year 2034. On top of that, a small group of immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, survivors of trafficking and abuse, they lost eligibility entirely, even though they made up just a tiny portion of who was even getting benefits. But some of the drop is also just people who are getting buried in the paperwork. So states are asking for more documentation, the phone lines are backed up, and caseworkers are prioritizing accuracy over speed. So people are getting dropped for administrative reasons, not because they stopped qualifying. And here's the part that, is getting left out, because this part hasn't actually hit yet. Right now, the federal government splits SNAP's administrative costs 50-50 with the states. Starting in October, though, that flips. The federal government now is only going to cover 25%, and the states have to cover 75%. In 2027, it gets bigger. States with error rates above 6%, meaning overpayments or underpayments, often just, paperwork mistakes, they have to start paying a share of the actual benefits themselves. Almost half of all states could owe more than $100 million or more. In a recent survey, 29% of states said that they may tighten eligibility even further to manage these costs. And 11% said that they might have to pause or withdraw from the program altogether. So yes, that means some states will not have SNAP. There's no backup system that can actually absorb this. Food banks cannot cover the gap that is a state-sized gap. Okay, getting a little angry here. So what can you actually do about all of this? It depends on where you're sitting. So if you or somebody in your household is on SNAP or close to the income line, don't wait for a letter. Check your state's work requirements for whatever kind of exemptions they have, especially if you are over 55, a veteran, or a parent of a young teen in that 14 to 17 year range, since those categories are just getting added. Recertify early and keep documentation of hours worked or volunteered before processing delays are already, they're already causing people to lose benefits. So don't let paperwork be a reason that you get cut off. Crazy side note here. At this one, when I was looking up, I couldn't believe this one. For anybody who works in grocery stores, you might kind of see this. So this is a demand signal because the National Grocers Association estimated that this cut could pull nearly $88 billion out of grocery sales nationally through 2034. So something to watch for. Plus, watch the state's budgets because picking up 75% of the costs, that money's got to come from somewhere. So it's going to be either tax increases, cuts elsewhere, or both. And the headline number is 4 million right now, but October is when most of this is going to really start to hit. So we're going to have to wait to see what is actually going to occur after October for how many people are going to start losing more benefits. So comment below if you or someone you know gets benefits and what you're experiencing and how you're looking to deal with this. Now, if you need to get out of debt, I have a school community. We have wonderful information there to help you get out of your debt without working yourself to death, without eating rice and beans. It's very worth your time. And, like, subscribe, all the things. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Think differently, take control, and be a renegade.